Hi, my name is Brian Henry, and this is my chapter summaries over a teacher's pocket guide to school law for EDL 850. Chapter 1 talks about control of public schools. The issue I chose out of this chapter is school boards. School boards are created by state statute. They are expected to execute state and federal laws and state board policy. They raise revenue through tax levies and school bonds to construct and maintain school facilities. Board members act as agents of the state. They represent the district electors, parents, citizens, and communities they serve. The board is a policy-making entity and is responsible for guiding the district through development of policies and procedures. The local board is the only entity that has the legal authority to employ or dismiss school personnel. Teachers are public employees whose responsibilities are defined in a contractual relationship with the local school board. As a future administrator, I will work hand in hand with the superintendent as well as the school board. Communication skills are vital to a successful administrator. ISLIC Standard 4 states that an administrator collaborates with families, community members, and responds to diverse needs. More than likely, your local school board is going to be full of community members and some family members of your students. Chapter 2 talks about instruction and curriculum standards. Use of internet for instruction is what I chose to talk about. School districts should develop and enforce an acceptable use policy. Students and parents should be required to review and agree on rules governing access and use of the internet. At a minimum, a filtering system should be put in place that restricts access to sites and chat rooms that contain offensive language, obscene language, descriptions of violence and crime, pornography, intolerance, and harassing messages. The AUP should provide flexibility for teachers to instructional use, though. Specific disciplinary measures for inappropriate use of the internet should be spelled out in the AUP. A well-written and defined AUP is crucial to any school and any administrator. Being able to keep students safe, but also allowing them to sites relevant to their studies is very important. I hope to be able to work with our technology department as well as with my staff to define a good, usable policy. Standard 1 says that a school administrator promotes success by developing a vision shared and supported by the whole school community. Therefore, you need an AUP that is developed by not just your technology department, but also with input of your staff, family members, students, parents, and community members. Chapter 3, Religion in Public Schools. I chose to talk about religious symbols. Public schools may not display religious exhibits such as paintings, statues, pictures, or other visual materials. It may be appropriate, however, for public school teachers to acknowledge and explain the various holidays of all cultural and religious groups as a unit in cultural heritage. Public school teachers should refrain from the use of religious symbols or pictures, even in conjunction with discussion of holidays. The presence of any type of religious symbol or picture would violate the principle of neutrality and could create a devotional atmosphere. Being able to separate church and state is a very important issue in schools. As an administrator, it would be up to me to be able to call out any teachers that are crossing the fine line of religious symbolism in the classroom. I hope to be fair and ethical in my decisions. And that's what Standard 5 states. An administrator promotes success of all students and staff by acting with integrity, fairness, and in an ethical manner. Chapter 4 talks about students, the law, and public schools. Dress and appearance is something I'd like to talk about. Local dress codes developed by the school board should be approved by board policy. Faculty, students, parents, and citizens should be involved in the formulation of a dress code. Dress codes will be supported by the courts only where there is evidence that they are reasonable. Dress codes based on style, taste, fashion, rather than health, safety, and order will not pass court scrutiny. Appearance that does not conform to rudiments of decency may be regulated. Dress that is considered vulgar or that mocks others on the basis of race, gender, religion, color, or national origin may also be prohibited. Student dress is a very hot topic in the fall and spring as the weather begins to heat up. As a male teacher, I sometimes find it difficult to approach a female student wearing too provocative of clothing. I tend to mention it to a female college colleague, possibly someone who teaches next door to me across the hall, to have them approach that student. However, as an administrator, I will have to be able to handle all situations. Making sure that the policy is well written and well announced would be a key to getting off on the right foot. Standard 1 talks about that a school administrator promotes success by developing a vision shared and supported again by the whole school community. When you have a dress code, you need buy-in from the parents. They're the first line of defense. They see their kids leave to go to school every day. If you can make sure that the parents know what is acceptable and not is acceptable, you might be starting off on the right foot. Chapter 5 talks about due process and student safety. Drug and alcohol testing. A district-wide program on drug education and alcohol abuse should be initiated, stressing the harmful effects of such substances and urging abstention from their use. District policies should be developed prohibiting the use and/or possession of alcohol or drugs on school grounds. Policies should indicate specific actions that will be taken when students are found guilty of violating school and district policies. As always, due process procedures should be implemented to ensure that there is a fair and impartial hearing in which the student athletes can present their side of the story as well. Teachers, parents, and athletes, health officials, and community members should be involved in formulating the district policy. And you should always have an open relationship with parents and have frequent communication with them. We are in the process of implementing a drug testing policy at Circle. As a future administrator, you have to make sure you involve all parties when formulating a successful plan. Communication is crucial. Standard 4 talks about an administrator collaborates with families, community members, and responds to diverse needs. And we did exactly that. We are hoping to start our policy this coming school year for fall of 12, but we had some parents back in the spring. We had an open discussion about it. We weren't happy that they weren't involved with creating this policy. So we went back, we allowed some more parental input, we got everybody's buy-in, and we're hoping for the next following year that we'll be able to implement this plan. Chapter 6, Liability and Student Records. I'm going to talk about acts of malice. Malice exists when there is intent to harm or injure another. And there are two types of malice, implied and actual. Educators should be mindful not to express opinions about students that might be damaging without having the factual information to validate their statements. Educators also should provide only reasonable information based on good faith and about which they are qualified to make statements. To me, I see where a lot of this occurs is through the gossip vine. Gossip tends to be one of the worst avenues when it comes to possible acts of malice. If an administrator can work to stop gossiping in and around school by staff members, they are more likely to avoid any conflicts. Communication, again, is key for a successful administrator. Standard 3 says the school administrator promotes success by ensuring management of resources for a safe, efficient, and effective learning environment. Chapter 7, Individuals with Disabilities. Inclusion is the issue I'd like to talk about. Inclusion is an extension of the traditional concept of mainstreaming. Its intent is to ensure as much as possible and when appropriate that children with disabilities be placed in regular classrooms. A child's evaluation results, which are used to develop the IEP, would ultimately determine the nature of the placement. It is valuable in integrating children with disabilities into the regular school program. As a teacher, I think it is great to involve all types of students in the regular classroom. I do think it is vital that I have the tools needed to help all students succeed, however. It is up to the administrator to help ensure that all staff members have the correct training to be able to handle any and all students. Communication is again key to being successful with inclusion. Standard 2 talks about that an administrator promotes success by advocating, nurturing, and sustaining a culture conducive to student learning. Chapter 8, the teacher and school liability. Trespassing on personal property. This is a tort that involves confiscating or interfering with the use of a student's personal property without proper authority. This tort occurs frequently when school personnel confiscate various items from students during the school day. Teachers and administrators have the right to confiscate such items, but they do not have the right to retain them for an unreasonable length of time. Arrangements should be made with the parent or guardian to ensure that the item is not returned to the student to bring to school again. Our cell phone policy states that they cannot be seen, heard, or used during class time. Students may use them during lunch and during passing periods, however. When I, as a teacher, see one during class, I confiscate it and send it to the assistant principal. As an administrator, it would be my duty to not retain the property for an unreasonable time and to communicate with parents to ensure that the use does not continue by the student. Standard 3 talks about a school administrator promoting success by ensuring management of resources for a safe, efficient, and effective learning environment. With phones going off in the class, you can't really have an efficient and effective learning environment. Cell phones do have a place with smartphones and being able to use tablets and laptops in the room, but you just have to communicate again and have policies in place on how they should be used. Chapter 9 talks about discrimination in employment. The Family and Medical Leave Act is something I'd like to talk about. It is designed to allow eligible employees up to a total of 12 work weeks for unpaid leave for one of the following reasons. The first and foremost one is the birth and care of the newborn child of the employee or the employee's spouse. Placement with the employee of a son or daughter for adoption or foster care is another element that might be affected. To care for an immediate family member with a serious health condition. The fourth item is to take medical leave when the employee is unable to work because of a serious health condition themselves. Employers with 50 or more employees are covered by this act. Knowing my staff and keeping up with any changing news is important. I should know when staff members are about to have a child and should communicate with staff if or when they have major medical procedures coming up. If I am in the know, then I can be more prepared to help. Standard 2 says that an administrator promotes success by advocating, nurturing, and sustaining a culture conducive to student learning and overall staff wellness. Chapter 10, Teacher Freedoms, Dress and Grooming. School authorities generally contend that proper dress and decorum create a professional image for teachers that has positive influence on students. Courts generally have agreed that school officials have the authority to regulate any aspect of a teacher's appearance that might disrupt the educational process. What hasn't been settled, however, is the degree of constitutional protection teachers are entitled to receive in disputes regarding dress and what evidence is needed to invalidate restrictions on dress. Teacher dress is an issue we've had here at Circle. We had a retired teacher/coach who was double dipping. He thought that since he was a basketball coach, he should be able to wear shorts year-round. If he was a PE teacher, this might be warranted, but since he was a math teacher, I'm not sure it should float so well. Unfortunately, the administration never called him out on this issue. By not calling him out, I know other staff members felt that he was receiving a special treatment. As an administrator, all staff should be treated the same. Standard 2 states that an administrator promotes success by advocating, nurturing, and sustaining a culture conducive to student learning and staff growth. In our last chapter, Chapter 11, Tenure, Dismissal, and Collective Negotiations, I'm going to talk about insubordination. Generally, it is viewed as a willful failure or inability to obey a reasonable and valid administrative directive. Typically, there is a discernible pattern in the teacher's behavior. However, some instances revolve around one serious violation. Teachers are typically given distinct warning regarding the undesirable conduct and has failed to heed the warning. In such cases, charges of insubordination are usually sustained. There must be documented evidence of the alleged misconduct, with further evidence that the administrative order or directive was valid and did not violate the teacher's personal rights. You hope to never come across this issue as an administrator. Eventually, however, I'm guessing even the best administrators butt heads with at least one teacher or another. Being able to keep open lines of communication is critical to helping avoid this. Giving sound and feasible advice for a plan of improvement is also important. Communication and documentation are key. Standard 2 talks about that an administrator promotes success by advocating, nurturing, and sustaining a culture conducive to student learning and staff growth. If a teacher and a principal are butting heads and the students get an eye of that and they know that the teachers and administrator aren't on the same page, there's going to be some issues. As an administrator, you need to work your hardest to make sure that you can see eye to eye, that your teachers see eye to eye with you. Communication is key. These are my chapter summaries for the book this semester. I've enjoyed the class, and I thank you for your time. This is Brian Henry. Thank you.